The harsh winds of the Cygnus expanse whipped around Juno Reeves as she frantically worked to repair her damaged shuttle. The emergency beacon flashed weakly, its signal fading as the power cells depleted. 3 days stranded on this desolate asteroid at the edge of charted space had left her with dwindling oxygen and even less hope. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," she muttered, adjusting the communications array with trembling fingers. Her short auburn hair clung to her forehead with sweat despite the cold. The starfield above her stretched endlessly, beautiful and terrifying in its vastness. The Helios Dawn had been her home for 4 years. As senior astronavigator, Juno had charted dozens of unexplored regions, but never had she been so utterly alone. The rest of the crew had escaped in the main evacuation vessel when the ship encountered the quantum storm. She'd stayed behind to ensure everyone got away, only to find her own escape pod damaged upon launch. A warning light flashed on her environment suit. 30 minutes of oxygen remaining. Juno closed her eyes, forcing down the panic rising in her chest. She'd survived worse situations, though none came immediately to mind. Her gaze drifted to the small holographic image clipped to her suit's wrist panel, her sister Talia and nephew Ren, smiling from the botanical gardens of New Earth. She'd promised to visit them after this mission. A strange vibration trembled through the asteroid beneath her boots. Instinctively, Juno grabbed her scanner, but before she could activate it, a blinding light washed over her. She raised her arm to shield her eyes, breath catching as the light coalesced into a sleek vessel unlike any she'd ever seen. The ship was crystalline in appearance, absorbing and refracting the distant starlight in hypnotic patterns. No visible propulsion system, no standard identification markers, nothing that aligned with known human or allied species technology. A seam appeared in the hull, widening into an entrance. Juno's hand moved to her sidearm, though the small plasma pistol seemed woefully inadequate against the advanced technology before her. A figure emerged, tall and graceful, moving with fluid precision despite the asteroid's low gravity. As it approached, Juno could make out more details, humanoid but definitely not human. Its skin had a faint luminescence, like moonlight through water, and its features were sharp yet harmonious. Most striking were its eyes, large, almond-shaped, and an impossible shade of silver that seemed to capture the starlight itself. "Your oxygen depletes," the being said, its voice resonating strangely in her helmet comm, "you will die here." Not a question, but a statement of fact. Juno swallowed hard. "That's the general idea, yes," she replied, aiming for nonchalance despite her racing heart. "Unless you're offering an alternative?" The being tilted its head, studying her with unsettling intensity. "You are not afraid?" "Oh, I'm terrified," Juno admitted with a wry smile. "But fear's not particularly helpful right now." Something like curiosity flickered across the alien's features. "I am Cathis, observer for the Seraphim Collective. Your presence in the Boundary Veil was detected." "Boundary Veil?" Juno frowned. "This is the Cygnus expanse according to our charts." "Your charts are incomplete," Cathis stated simply. "This region marks the edge of what you call known space, but it is the beginning of Seraphim territory." Juno's scientific curiosity momentarily overwhelmed her survival instinct. The Seraphim were considered mythical by most of human space, rumors of an advanced civilization that appeared at the edges of disaster zones only to vanish without a trace. Countless expeditions had sought evidence of their existence. "We've been searching for your people for generations," she breathed. "We have not wished to be found." Cathis moved closer, silver eyes examining her damaged vessel. "Your technology is primitive, yet you ventured this far." Another warning flashed, 15 minutes of oxygen. Juno straightened, professional pride overtaking fear. "I'm Juno Reeves, senior astronavigator of the research vessel Helios Dawn. We were mapping quantum anomalies when our ship was damaged. I'm the only one left." She gestured toward her failing equipment. "And as you so helpfully pointed out, not for much longer." Cathis was silent for a long moment, head slightly tilted as though listening to something Juno couldn't hear. Our laws forbid interference with developing civilizations, he finally said, a strange tension in his voice. Contact is prohibited. Rescue even more so. Juno's heart sank. So you came to watch me die? Charming cultural practice. I came to observe the anomaly your ship created, Cathis corrected. Finding you was unexpected. Her oxygen warning blinked more urgently, 10 minutes remaining. Juno turned back to her equipment, fingers resuming their work despite the futility. Well, don't let me keep you from your observations, she said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. I'd hate to interfere with your non-interference. She sensed rather than saw Cathis move closer, his presence radiating an unnatural warmth in the cold void. You continue your repairs despite knowing they will fail, he noted. Why? Juno didn't look up. Because giving up isn't in my nature. Even facing certainty of death. Especially then, she replied, forcing steady hands as she reconnected a frayed circuit. As long as I'm breathing, there's a chance, however small. 5 minutes of oxygen. Cathis's long fingers suddenly covered hers, stopping her work. His touch sent an unexpected current through her, like static electricity but warmer, more organic. Your persistence is remarkable. Something had changed in his voice, a resolution where before there had been detachment. I will break our highest law by interfering. The consequences will be severe. Before Juno could respond, Cathis had lifted her effortlessly, carrying her toward his vessel. Her training told her to resist, to fear the unknown, but her oxygen level counter now showed less than 3 minutes. Why? She managed to ask as they approached the crystalline ship. Why risk punishment for a stranger? Cathis paused at the threshold, silver eyes meeting hers through her helmet visor. Because in all my centuries observing your kind, I have never witnessed such determination to live. Such spirit deserves continuation. The interior of the ship enveloped her in light as the entrance sealed behind them. Atmospheric adjustment was immediate, pressure, temperature, and composition altering to human-compatible levels with technology far beyond anything her people possessed. Remove your helmet, Cathis instructed. You can breathe here. Hesitantly, Juno disengaged the seal. The air that filled her lungs was richer than anything she'd experienced, carrying subtle fragrances that reminded her of spring on new earth. Thank you, she said, the inadequacy of the word striking her as soon as they left her mouth. How do you properly thank someone for saving your life at the cost of their own standing? Cathis moved to what appeared to be the ship's control center, a series of translucent panels that responded to his touch with flowing symbols and pulsing light. The Seraphim High Council will demand your immediate return to human space, he said, his back to her. Or worse, your elimination as a security risk. Cold fear washed through Juno. You're taking me to your homeworld? Yes. The ship hummed to life around them, the asteroid falling away as they accelerated at impossible speed. The damage is done. My transgression cannot be hidden. Only by presenting you to the Council can I hope to mitigate the consequences. Which are? Cathis turned to her, his expression solemn. For bringing an outsider to our sacred realm? Traditionally, death. The stars blurred into streaks of light outside the viewports as Juno contemplated her rescuer, an alien being willing to sacrifice everything for a principle she didn't yet understand. Then why save me at all, she whispered. Something like a smile touched Cathis's luminescent features. Because sometimes, Juno Reeves, laws must bend when they encounter something worth preserving. Your courage may cost me my life, but perhaps it will also awaken my people from centuries of isolation. As the ship accelerated beyond any speed Juno had thought possible, she watched the being who had saved her with growing wonder. Little did she know that their chance encounter at the edge of forever would soon challenge the foundations of two civilizations, and change the course of history itself. The Seraphim homeworld, luminaries, materialized before them like a jewel suspended in the void, a planet of crystalline mountains and flowing silver oceans beneath an atmosphere that shimmered with subtle iridescence. Juno pressed her palms against the viewport, momentarily forgetting her precarious situation in the face of such beauty. "It's breathtaking," she whispered, watching continents of pale blue foliage swirl with patterns that suggested conscious design rather than natural evolution. "It is home," Caithus replied simply, though Juno detected a note of pride in his voice. He stood behind her at the navigation console, his luminescent features reflected in the crystal viewport. "And now my sanctuary becomes my prison." The ship descended through layers of atmosphere, each more radiant than the last, until they glided over a vast metropolis that defied human architectural understanding. Structures that appeared to be living crystal rose from the landscape, interconnected by pathways of light. Nothing seemed fixed or solid, the entire city pulsed with an organic rhythm, as if breathing. "Your people built all this?" Juno asked, mathematical mind already calculating the engineering principles required. "We grew it," Caithus corrected. "The seraphim do not build as humans do. We persuade matter to arrange itself according to our needs." The ship slowed, docking within a massive structure that resembled a blooming flower carved from opalescent stone. As the entrance sealed behind them, Juno felt the first real pangs of apprehension. "What happens now?" Caithus's silver eyes met hers. "Now you become the first human to stand before the High Council of Luminaries. And I become the first seraphim in 12 generations to break our prime directive. I won't let you face this alone," Juno said firmly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "This is my fight too." A strange expression crossed Caithus's face, something between amusement and wonder. "Your species' propensity for loyalty to those you barely know continues to fascinate me." Before Juno could respond, the ship's entrance dilated open. 4 tall seraphim stood waiting, their expressions coldly impassive, holding staff-like implements that hummed with energy. "Observer Caithus," one spoke, voice melodic yet severe. "You are summoned to immediate audience with the High Council. The human will be contained for examination." "The human has a name," Juno interjected before Caithus could speak. "Astronavigator Juno Reeves of the research vessel Helios Dawn. And I go where he goes." The guards exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for direct address from what they considered a lesser species. Caithus stepped forward, positioning himself subtly between Juno and the guards. "Astronavigator Reeves remains under my protection," he said with quiet authority. "The council will see us both." Tension crackled in the air like static electricity. For a moment, Juno thought the guards might refuse, but something in Caithus's stance, perhaps his position within their hierarchy, gave them pause. "The council will decide," the lead guard finally conceded. "Follow." They were led through corridors that seemed to shift and flow around them, the material of the walls simultaneously solid and liquid, radiating soft light from within. Other seraphim they passed stopped to stare openly at Juno, their silver eyes wide with what might have been curiosity or revulsion. "Your people don't get many visitors, I take it," Juno murmured to Caithus. "The last outsider to set foot on Luminaries was over 3 centuries ago," he replied quietly. "The encounter ended poorly." "That's not encouraging." "It was not meant to be." Something in his tone made her glance up sharply, but Caithus's face revealed nothing. They arrived at an immense chamber where 9 seraphim sat in a semicircle upon crystalline seats that rose from the living floor. Unlike Caithus, whose attire resembled a fitted uniform of silver-blue material, these seraphim wore elaborate robes that shifted color with their movements, suggesting status or rank. The central figure, distinguished by a crown-like headdress that captured and refracted light, spoke first. "Observer Caithus, you stand accused of violating our most sacred law. You have brought an outsider to Luminaries, endangered our secrecy, and interfered with the natural course of another species' development." The voice was neither male nor female but somehow both, resonating through the chamber with authority. "What say you to these charges?" Caithus stepped forward, head bowed slightly in deference. "High Oracle Talia, I acknowledge my actions but challenge their characterization as violations. The human astronavigator Juno Reeves was stranded by accident within our monitoring zone. Her presence was the result of a quantum anomaly, not deliberate intrusion. Yet you chose to bring her here rather than leave her to her fate, another counselor interjected, voice colder than the others. I chose to preserve life, Counselor Nemeth, Cathis replied evenly. Is that not also among our highest principles? Not at the expense of our security. Nemeth's voice rose, colors in his robe darkening to angry crimson. For millennia we have remained hidden, observing but never engaging. Our survival depends on this separation. Juno stepped forward, unable to remain silent. With respect, Counselor, your assessment is based on fear, not fact. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. The guards tensed, staffs humming louder. You allow the human to speak? Oracle Talia's voice was dangerously quiet. I speak for myself, Juno countered, ignoring Cathis's warning glance. I'm a scientist, an explorer. My people seek knowledge, not conquest. We've formed peaceful alliances with dozens of species across known space. Known to you, Nemeth sneered. Your known space is but a fraction of the galaxy. Your species is young, primitive, violent. Enough. Oracle Talia raised a hand. The human's perspective is irrelevant to these proceedings. Observer Cathis, your punishment will be. If I may, High Oracle, interrupted an elderly seraphim seated at the end of the semicircle. Unlike the others, his robes were simple, almost austere. Perhaps there is another perspective worth considering. Talia inclined her head respectfully. Elder Soren, the council recognizes your right to speak. The elderly seraphim rose with visible effort. Before we pass judgment, I suggest we examine the human's vessel and the quantum anomaly that brought her to our border. If there is indeed a new type of phenomenon occurring, it would be negligent not to investigate. Observer Cathis's expertise would be valuable in this matter. Murmurs rippled through the council. Juno glanced at Cathis, whose expression remained carefully neutral, though she detected something like hope in his eyes. A reasonable suggestion, Oracle Talia finally conceded. Observer Cathis, you will oversee this investigation, but the human remains in containment until. Impossible, Cathis interrupted, causing another ripple of shock. Astronavigator Reeves is the only one who can properly interpret the ship's data. Her expertise is essential. A tense silence followed, broken by Elder Soren's gentle voice. Perhaps a compromise. The human remains under Observer Cathis's supervision. They conduct the investigation together, with appropriate safeguards. Oracle Talia studied Juno with unsettling intensity. Very well. You have 3 cycles to complete your investigation. After that, the council will reconvene to determine both your fates. She turned her silver gaze to Cathis. Be warned, observer, any further deviation from protocol will result in immediate judgment. The human's presence is already an unprecedented concession. As they were escorted from the chamber, Juno felt a strange mixture of relief and trepidation. What just happened? She whispered to Cathis. We were granted a reprieve, he replied, voice equally low. Though not necessarily salvation. 3 cycles, how long is that in human terms? Approximately 9 of your days. 9 days to convince an advanced alien civilization not to execute them both. Juno had faced better odds. They were led to a research facility on the outskirts of the main city, where Juno's damaged shuttle had already been transported. The laboratory itself was a marvel of organic technology, instruments that seemed alive, displays that formed and dissolved in midair. When the guards finally left them alone, Cathis's composed demeanor faltered slightly. That was unexpected. Which part? Juno asked, already examining the equipment surrounding her shuttle. The not immediate execution or the fact that I spoke up? Both, he admitted. Humans truly do not understand their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Juno snorted. Maybe that's our greatest strength. Working side by side over the following days, they gradually pieced together what had happened to the Helios Dawn. The quantum storm that had damaged Juno's ship wasn't natural, it was the result of an ancient seraphim monitoring station malfunctioning after millennia of neglect. "This can't be right," Juno murmured on the seventh day, examining data from both her shuttle's records and the seraphim archives Cathis had reluctantly accessed. According to these coordinates, the monitoring station was established to observe Earth? Cathis stiffened. "That's impossible. We have no record of direct observation of your homeworld. The evidence suggests otherwise." Juno projected a series of stellar coordinates that aligned perfectly. "Your people weren't just watching human space, they were specifically focused on Earth, dating back nearly 10,000 years. Their eyes met across the holographic display, the implications hanging between them like a physical presence." "There's more," Juno said quietly, pulling up another set of records. "Genetic scans your medical team performed when I arrived. Compare them to your own species' baseline." Cathis did so, his luminescent features paling further as the results materialized before them. "This cannot be." "But it is," Juno said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Certain markers in human DNA match seraphim patterns, too precisely for coincidence. Our species aren't just aware of each other. Somehow, we're connected." Cathis moved away from the display, his normally fluid movements stiff with tension. "If the Council learns of this, they'll silence us both," Juno finished for him. "Because this contradicts everything your civilization believes about itself. Your isolation isn't about protection, it's about control." Cathis turned to her, conflict evident in his silver eyes. "This knowledge changes everything." "It already has," Juno said softly, suddenly aware of how close they stood, how the past week of working together had created something neither had anticipated. "The question is, what do we do with it?" His hand, cooler than human temperature but radiating that strange energy she'd felt before, brushed against hers. "We have 2 days before the Council reconvenes. 2 days to decide whether truth or tradition will guide our future." As their fingers intertwined, human and seraphim, supposedly separate species with an apparently shared history, Juno realized that far more than their individual lives hung in the balance. They had stumbled upon forbidden knowledge that could reunite two civilizations, or destroy them both. Dawn broke over luminaries in waves of prismatic light, filtering through the translucent walls of Juno's quarters. She hadn't slept. The evidence she and Cathis had uncovered consumed her thoughts, the impossible connection between humans and seraphim, the deliberate separation of their species, and the web of secrecy maintained for millennia. A gentle chime announced Cathis's arrival. The door dissolved rather than opened, a constant reminder of how alien this world remained despite its growing familiarity. "You look terrible," he observed, studying her with those unervingly perceptive silver eyes. Juno ran a hand through her disheveled auburn hair. "Thanks. That's exactly what a girl wants to hear before facing a tribunal that might execute her." Something like a smile ghosted across Cathis's luminescent features. Over the past 8 days, she'd begun to read his subtle expressions, the slight tilt of his head when puzzled, the almost imperceptible softening around his eyes when amused. "The Council reconvenes in 3 hours," he said, moving further into the room. "We must decide our approach." Juno gestured to the scattered data crystals on her workstation. "I've been compiling everything we discovered, the genetic similarities, the ancient monitoring station, the historical records of Earth observation. The evidence is irrefutable. Evidence the Council will never allow to be presented." Cathis's voice was gentle but firm. "You don't understand what's at stake, Juno. This challenges the fundamental doctrine of seraphim exceptionalism, the belief that we evolved separately and superior to all other sentient species." Juno stood, frustration giving her renewed energy. "But it's the truth. Your people have been lying, or been lied to, for generations. Doesn't that matter to you?" Cathis moved closer, his tall frame casting a subtle glow in the morning light. "Of course it matters. But truth without wisdom is dangerous. If we simply announce these findings, we risk not only our lives but potentially igniting conflict between our worlds. So we say nothing. Accept whatever punishment they decide for us. Juno shook her head vehemently. I can't do that, Cathis. Not when what we found could change everything. His cool fingers brushed her arm, sending that now familiar current through her skin. There is another way. Elder Soren. The old counselor who intervened for us. Cathis nodded. Soren was my mentor when I first joined the Observer Corps. He believes in the old philosophies, that knowledge should guide us, not dogma. If anyone on the council might listen, it's him. Hope flickered within Juno. Can we speak with him before the hearing? It would violate protocol, Cathis said, then added with the faintest hint of mischief, but I seem to have developed a habit of that lately. An hour later, they were escorted through a secluded garden where crystalline plants grew in mathematically perfect patterns. Elder Soren sat beside a pool of quicksilver liquid that moved with purpose, forming and reforming complex shapes. I wondered how long it would take you to seek me out, the elderly seraphim said without looking up from the pool. Your discovery is written in your postures, your energies. Even without words, you radiate disruption. Juno exchanged glances with Cathis. You know. I suspect, Soren corrected, finally raising his gaze to meet theirs. As I have suspected for over 2 centuries. But suspicion is not proof, and proof has been elusive. Cathis stepped forward. Until now. With practiced efficiency, they presented their findings to the elder. Soren listened impassively, his aged fingers occasionally rippling through the quicksilver pool as if seeking answers there. The genetic markers are particularly compelling, Juno concluded. They suggest deliberate manipulation, not random evolutionary parallels. An uncomfortable truth, Soren murmured. That we are not as separate from the younger species as we have believed ourselves to be. More than that, Cathis added. The historical records indicate ongoing intervention, not just ancient contact. Seraphim observers have been guiding human development, subtly influencing key technological advancements. Soren's silver eyes narrowed. To what end? That's what we couldn't determine, Juno said. The records become deliberately obscured around 3,000 years ago, coinciding with a major shift in Seraphim governance. The ascension of the luminous path, Soren nodded slowly. When the Observer Corps was formally established and our policy of non-interference codified. He rose with surprising grace for one so ancient. This explains much. And complicates everything. Will you help us? Cathis asked directly. Soren studied them both, his gaze lingering on the narrow space between them where their hands nearly touched. You two have formed a connection that transcends mere scientific collaboration. Juno felt heat rise to her cheeks but didn't deny it. The past 8 days working alongside Cathis had created something neither of them had anticipated, a bridge between two supposedly incompatible beings. My feelings for Juno are irrelevant to the validity of our discoveries, Cathis said stiffly. On the contrary, Soren replied with unexpected warmth. They may be the most relevant factor of all. Follow me. The elder led them deeper into the garden, to a secluded alcove where the crystalline plants grew denser, forming a natural barrier against observation. With a gesture, he activated a hidden panel in what appeared to be solid stone. What I am about to show you violates every protocol of the council, Soren said gravely. But I have waited too long for the proper vessel of truth to emerge. The panel slid away, revealing a small chamber containing a single artifact, a cube of material unlike anything Juno had seen on luminaries, organic yet technological, pulsing with internal light. The Mnemosyne cube, Soren explained. One of 5 original records from before the Ascension. The others were destroyed during the Great Purge when the new doctrine was established. Why wasn't this one destroyed? Juno asked, scientists' curiosity overriding her apprehension. Because I stole it, Soren said simply. I was young then, barely into my 2nd century, but I recognized the systematic erasure of our true history for what it was, a consolidation of power disguised as cultural preservation. Cathis stared at his mentor in astonishment. All these years. I have waited for the right moment, the right advocates. Soren gestured toward the cube. This contains the unaltered record of human seraphim relations, including the original genetic modifications performed by our ancestors. Modifications? Juno echoed, a chill running through her. Your species did not evolve naturally, Soren confirmed. You were, guided. Enhanced. Potential identified and cultivated over thousands of years. The implications staggered her. We're, what? Some kind of experiment? More accurately, inheritors, Soren corrected gently. The seraphim recognized long ago that our evolutionary path had reached its apex. We gained tremendous mental and technological advancement but lost something equally vital, adaptability. Creativity. The spark that drives true innovation. So humans were created as, complementary beings? Cathis asked slowly. Created is too strong. Modified from existing primate stock, certainly. But the intention was never domination or control. It was symbiosis. Partnership. A shared future that the luminous path doctrine deliberately severed. Juno's mind raced through the implications. The Council will never accept this. Not from me alone, Soren agreed. An old voice long suspected of harboring heretical views. But from you, a living embodiment of what was intended, there is a chance. They'll simply silence us, Cathis objected. Not if the presentation occurs during the public judgment. Soren's eyes gleamed with strategic calculation. By tradition, final judgments must be witnessed by representatives from all seraphim castes. To silence you would require acknowledging what was said, and that acknowledgement itself would spread the truth they seek to contain. A plan began to take shape between them. When they finally left the garden, the Mnemosyne cube carefully concealed within Juno's attire, the first stirrings of hope took root alongside the growing certainty that their lives, and their worlds, would never be the same. The council chamber was fuller than before. Hundreds of seraphim from various castes filled the observation galleries, scientists, artisans, cultivators, and other designations Juno couldn't identify. Their presence lent an air of ceremony to the proceedings. The public judgment, Cathis murmured as they were led to the center of the chamber. Soren was right, they're making an example of us. Oracle Talia sat at the center of the High Council semicircle, her elaborate headdress more imposing than before. To her right, Counselor Nemeth wore robes of deep crimson, the color of judgment, Cathis had explained. To her left sat Elder Soren, his simple attire a stark contrast to the others' finery. Observer Cathis and human Juno Reeves, Oracle Talia began, her melodic voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. You stand before the High Council to receive judgment for violations of our most sacred laws. Have you completed the investigation you were granted? Cathis stepped forward, head bowed in ceremonial respect. We have, High Oracle. And we have discovered matters of grave importance to the future of both our peoples. Nemeth leaned forward. The only matter of importance is your defiance of the luminous path. The human should have been left to her fate. Instead, you have compromised our security and traditions. With respect, Counselor, Juno interjected, heart pounding but voice steady, your traditions are built on deliberate falsehoods. A shocked murmur rippled through the assembly. Oracle Talia's eyes narrowed dangerously. You dare. I dare to speak truth, Juno continued, drawing strength from Cathis's steady presence beside her. Our investigation revealed that humans and seraphim share more than casual observers might suspect. We are connected, genetically, historically, purposefully. Absurd claims without evidence, Nemeth dismissed with a wave of his hand. This was the moment they had prepared for. Juno reached into her garment and withdrew the Mnemosyne cube. Gasps echoed through the chamber as recognition dawned on the older council members' faces. The evidence exists, she said, holding the cube aloft. An original record from before the ascension of the luminous path. One that reveals the true relationship between our species, not as separate evolutionary branches, but as deliberately cultivated companions. Oracle Talia rose from her seat, voice sharp with alarm. Guards! Seize that artifact. But Elder Soren stood as well. It is the right of any accused to present evidence in their defense. That is our oldest law, predating even the luminous path. Will you now violate that tradition, Oracle? The chamber grew tense with competing authorities. Juno glanced at Caithus, who gave her the subtlest of nods. With practiced movements, she activated the cube as Soren had shown them. Light erupted from the ancient device, coalescing into three-dimensional images that filled the council chamber. Records thousands of years old played out before the stunned assembly, seraphim scientists working alongside early humans, genetic sequences being carefully modified, collaborative settlements on prehistoric Earth. What you see is our shared history, Caithus addressed the assembly, his voice carrying the authority of an observer. Not separate species divided by evolution and circumstance, but deliberately linked beings meant to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. The images continued, showing the gradual separation of the species, the establishment of the non-interference doctrine, and finally, the systematic erasure of their shared history. The luminous path was never about protection, Juno added. It was about control. About a few seraphim deciding that the symbiotic relationship our ancestors envisioned was too threatening to their power. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Council members argued among themselves while the various castes in the galleries reacted with everything from outrage to fascination. Through it all, Oracle Talia sat rigid, her features a mask of controlled fury. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the tumult like a blade. You have presented manipulated records and seditious theories. This changes nothing about your violations or your punishment. If these are manipulations, Elder Soren challenged, then subject them to verification. Let our geneticists examine the human and compare the markers themselves. Let our historians analyze the cube's materials and dating. Unless, of course, you fear what they might confirm. The challenge hung in the air, impossible to dismiss without appearing guilty of the very cover-up they were denying. Oracle Talia's gaze swept the chamber, clearly calculating the political ramifications of each possible response. It was Nemeth who broke the impasse, rising to address the gallery directly. These heretical claims seek to undermine everything that makes the seraphim exceptional. We are not connected to lesser species. We did not engineer them. These are fabrications designed to weaken our resolve and contaminate our purity. His words found purchase among certain factions, particularly the older seraphim, but Juno noticed something unexpected. The younger members, especially those from scientific castes, appeared skeptical of his rhetoric. Caithus sensed the shifting mood as well. He stepped forward, addressing his next words not to the council but to his fellow seraphim. I have observed humanity for decades. Their resilience, creativity, and capacity for growth are precisely the qualities our ancient records suggest they were designed to embody. Qualities we once valued enough to nurture in another species, qualities we ourselves have gradually lost in our isolation. He turned to Juno, something unspoken passing between them before he continued. And in my time with Astronavigator Reeves, I have witnessed firsthand the potential of reconnection. Not subjugation, not contamination, but complement. The future our ancestors envisioned before fear drove us apart. The chamber fell silent, the weight of his words settling over the assembly. In that moment of quiet, Juno felt Caithus's hand find hers, fingers intertwining in a gesture that was both defiance and demonstration. Oracle Talia's voice, when it finally came, was cold with controlled rage. You have overplayed your position, Observer Caithus. Such blatant fraternization with a lesser species confirms your unfitness for duty. She rose, addressing the guards. Remove them both to separate containment. The council will deliberate privately. As the guards approached, Elder Soren made his final move. I invoke the right of ancestral witness. Let them remain together until judgment is rendered. It was an ancient provision, Soren had explained earlier, one that prevented the separation of those whose testimony might be interconnected. Oracle Talia could not refuse without further undermining traditional law. So be it, she conceded icily. But they remain under guard. This council will reconvene when our deliberation is complete. As they were escorted from the chamber, the murmurs of the assembly followed them, some hostile, others curious, but none indifferent. Whatever happened next, the carefully maintained isolation of the seraphim had already begun to crack. That went about as well as could be expected, Juno murmured when they were alone in their containment chamber, guards posted outside. Cathus's expression was solemn but not defeated. The truth is exposed now. They cannot simply rebury it without questions being asked, especially among the younger castes. Juno studied his luminescent features, marveling again at how quickly she had come to care for this being from another world. What happens now? Now, he said, his cool fingers brushing her cheek with surprising tenderness, we wait for the council to decide whether they fear the future more than they respect their past. Their eyes met in shared understanding. Whatever the verdict, they had already changed the course of two civilizations, and perhaps, in the process, found something neither had thought possible, a connection that transcended the artificial boundaries between their worlds.